Scaling personalized student outreach with limited resources is tough. At Muhlenberg College, Shane Baglini used Element 451's AI first Ignite tools to generate a 12-month nurture campaign in minutes.
I remember sitting in a meeting. We were talking about long-term lead nurture for a graduate program. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to show off here a little bit. So I built out in the meeting, projecting onto the screen, a 12-month nurture campaign, one email a month for 12 months. And I let it run in the background and I pulled it up on the screen and showed the emails. And they were like, how did you do that while we were talking about this? I didn't. AI did.
Harness the power of AI to communicate with students at scale in a single, streamlined marketing automation platform. Now your team can do more than ever with less time and effort. Visit element451.com to learn more. My guest today is Josie Alquist, digital engagement and leadership consultant and executive coach. She's also the founder of the Digital Community Cohort, where I'm currently a faculty member. We'll link more information in the show notes. Today, Josie and I get into the disconnect between student affairs and central communications. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager, a podcast that addresses the do's, don'ts, and dynamics of the digital ecosystem specific to higher education. I'm your host, Jenny Lee Fowler. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education social media management and marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Josie Alquist, I am so excited for you to be on the podcast. Welcome.
Yay!
Yay! So, Josie, I feel like when it comes to higher ed, you are there. You're front and center and always engaged. So, can you tell me where your passion for higher education came from?
Oh, wow. I would definitely give credit to my grandparents who, very working cowboy class, like had to rent a ranch and then lost it. And my grandpa didn't have more than a 7th grade education. And he always was saying, get your education, kid. No one can take that from you. My grandma always wanted to be an English teacher, but back then you raised kids and just, did the work. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. And she definitely turned on that voice of like, okay, boys and girls. I'm like, who's this lady? Which I do the same on stage or probably right now. So it was never a question of me going to college. It was, this is what you do. And the beautiful thing is whatever I wanted to do. And the minute I stepped foot on a college campus, I was like, I'm home. From the people to the learning, I just, hook, line, and sinker, and I've never left.
Oh my gosh. I love that story. And when you say they were like, working class cowboys, you mentioned they were literal, your grandfather was literally a cowboy.
Yeah, both sides and almost opposite stories. My dad's side was much more like established, big ranch, but we were so much closer with my mom's side. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I love that origin
Yeah,
story.
like the show Yellowstone. I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah. Except they keep dumping bodies in Wyoming, where I'm from. It's very offensive.
On the show. Let's just mention this is the show and
This is a TV show.
not in real life.
I mean, listen, it's wild back there. So.
Okay, so I'm in a central communications office, and I know student affairs is a totally different beast. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges student affairs encounters in growing an online community? Because it is
Yeah.
really different.
Absolutely. So I was a make 'em up marketer. So I've never formally been in a central office or even in an actual by title marketing role, but like they just didn't exist, especially
Yeah,
with social
yeah.
media. I just saw tools, taught myself, involved my students, and evolved as we went. And I've always come from student affairs. Again, super involved college student. And I was the one back in the day going to my central comms people saying, y'all should be probably checking out this YouTube thing, Facebook. Can we meet like once a month? And they were like, you're kind of annoying. I'm like, I'm going to keep coming. But
I love it.
I always involve students. And so I work a ton with student affairs still, who, they are scrappy like me in resources and strategy and skills. But as you talk about a lot, social and strategy is not a a plaything. Like it is evolved and grown
Yep.
up, and
Sophisticated. Yeah.
all pockets of campus need to be as well. So what I find in student affairs today is there is lacking in both positional and resource structure, where you can only slap silly putty on so much before it's gonna disintegrate, and skill sets. So again, you can teach yourself a whole bunch from conferences and resources, but some of these are, you can get your bachelor's in social
I
strategy
I
in
know.
addition to digital analytics. And
It is a
i'm
brand new world.
i'm
Yeah.
not saying all those things you need that type of education in these roles,
Right.
but
But it's offered now.
right, you
That's
can't
the
just be
crazy thing.
like, oh, you worked in career services, let's just throw you into this
Right.
marketing communications role and expect you to be successful. And then the
Mhm.
last one
Mhm.
is sustainable and realistic strategy that is tied to goals and measurement, just like student affairs does with learning outcomes. We have to do that in the way that we market and communicate with students. And so that's the kind of work that I do both individually as well as throughout divisions, from executives down to students, because I know where there might be some frustrations from central comms with student affairs. Their intentions are in the right place. They know students from both theory and practice to names and what's really happening at a campus. And we need to partner so much more together for our strategies, but also just for our students. So, yeah, student
Yeah.
affairs is very near and dear to me.
Totally. Like I mean, preach, Josie. But I love that term, make 'em up marketer. Did you is that no, wait, hold on. I've never heard that before.
I
Did you
just
just
made it up. I just made it up.
I think you need to trademark that term. It's in my head now and it's so catchy. But it's true. Like a lot of us are now in this realm of digital marketing, and I didn't have a marketing background, like either. So I think I relate to being a make 'em up marketer, which I love. Yeah, so you did mention pain points. So what are some of the pain points student affairs has when working with central comms? Like, and I know you mentioned like we should be working better, but
Yeah.
how can you give us some steps in how we could do that better?
Yeah. Well, it's just so interesting how ingrained it becomes coming from student affairs and creating my own consulting business. I was intimidated to branch out to connect and build community with true marketer. I was intimidated.
Mm,
I just and that was born in where my, like field was, because some experiences of feeling like we sometimes were talked down to, that
from
um,
central.
yeah, like
Mm,
branding misalignments, branding police, that our tactics were less than. And sometimes our executives didn't get along. And so literally we could only
mm,
talk to certain people. And
mhm.
the bureaucracy and the relationships got in the way of the goodness. And you can see that on any division, from academics to athletics. Like, sometimes just the gunk gets in the way of the good stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're looking for workarounds, that's not great, right? When you're looking for a person to partner with on, when you say in the goodness, in the good way.
And I'll say this too now, on the other side, both digging into student affairs work as well as supporting Central Comms is, bless their heart, there is some troublesome tactics out there in student affairs. I mean, just copy and paste the list of what you educate on All About too, of not using alt text, posters and flyers in the feed. And honestly, a lot of it is so teachable and trainable, but keep in mind, most student affairs staff who are running social or marketing, it's probably other duties as assigned.
Right.
And
it's not ideal.
And who they are reporting to, the chances of them having any knowledge and skill in marketing and probably telling that person to post that is high. So what I do a lot is just educating on very common best practices and trying to build skill sets up from there. So I take two tactics. Is we need Central Comms and Student Affairs to play together.
Sure.
Get coffee, go to a happy hour. I don't know, like whatever your love language is, like, and if it's just the people that do social, or if there's some rebuilding on the executive side that needs to happen, because what the trickle down happens in both when there's poor tactics and strategies happening and relationally is what takeovers start to happen that can become quite hurtful and again aren't for the good of students sometimes. So there are many reasons why some things should be centralized or resources pooled, but sometimes it happens in a bit more aggressive way that maybe isn't for the best. Or I've also seen some amazing dotted lines and hybrid models between comms and student affairs for shared resources. Because imagine if your director of comms and student affairs has all direct access to the resources, support, and knowledge in Central Comms versus just on a little lonely island over here trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But the relational has to be there and the resources. So, because the huge benefit of student affairs, no matter your structure, they have access that Central Comms does not have. As much as you're going to try, you are not going to be up with the students at 3 a.m. when there is a crisis.
Right.
The RDs, the individuals at events. I mean, we would love to have y'all come out and like day in the life of what it's like as a programmer or, academic advisor.
I feel that.
Because to really see what it's like, the hours are wild, but you will find the people in student affairs love students. We have such hearts and we know the real stories that, maybe aren't the ones you can always tell in social, but from actually getting feedback about how to connect and communicate with students, and them being your allies for Central Comms too could be an amazing partnership, and vice versa. The knowledge that Central Comms has that you just probably think is so simple and silly would be so very helpful.
Yeah, no, I don't think anything is silly. I think we all have different starting points, and I've told you in my um in my seat, or where what I do at MIT, I am having a lot of the same conversations over and over again, but that's okay, because I want to make sure we all are starting from a good place. We're all learning. It's a constant education moment. But I think I want to touch upon something you said. I think there's a lot, there's sort of like this years of misunderstanding, or
Oh,
maybe it's assumptions. It's assumptions from the two offices that,
yeah.
and so they're, maybe we're not approaching each other in the right way, because it's funny because you say sometimes from central comms there's a feeling of like sort of like maybe a condescending attitude, or
Or
that
you might
may,
just be tired.
yeah,
I've taught
well,
this
that's true.
thing over. I've told
That,
them over. And trust me, when I'm working with some student affairs divisions, I'm like, I can't tell you another time to use alt text.
right.
Like and I'm like, God, it's going to kill me, but
Yeah,
I'm going to.
yeah,
So I've seen people in your shoes create online tutorials, so then you're just updating it and you're
right.
requiring anyone with access to, XYZ tools, they have to complete this. And so at least you know that they've heard the education,
Yeah.
and maybe you've saved yourself a few breaths.
Yeah, that, I mean,
Having
that
to
makes,
repeat.
I have explanations of things where
Yeah,
I write them down and I cut and paste them, 'cause
I know.
but you
I
know
know.
what, but it's very, very necessary. But here's the thing, is that sometimes, there's work, and I often think, gosh, why didn't they just ask me? Because
Mm,
I'm happy to help and assist and share, and share what I know, and be helpful, right? But then
yeah,
but then I could see how in student affairs they might not want to ask central comms, because then maybe like they might get slapped for bad branding, or maybe
yeah.
they maybe,
Well,
or something else might be wrong, right? So I
yeah.
could see why. Yeah.
2 things I think about, again, thinking back to when 12, 13 years ago, when I mean, shout out to Dr. Liz Gross for being like, "Josie, you need to get integrated literally into the marketing comms world." But I'm like, "I'm nervous and scared." She's like, "They're amazing." So again, you may not realize that you are intimidating based upon like your skill level to
Mm.
people across campus. The second thing, and this is, and I do think people like you, Jenny, will relate to this. Student affairs, love it or hate it, just like academic affairs, many positions require a master's degree, if not a
Mm.
doctorate. And
Mhm.
it's holding that pocket of campus back, honestly. And some campuses are moving away and allowing more bachelors. So,
Mm.
but that to say, I love education, but because we are pushed to have higher degrees, I do think there's a level of perfectionism and feeling like you need to have this figured out.
Oh.
And there might be a feeling of, I need to figure, this out. I should know how to do this. Just being indoctrinated in education.
So even asking is hard, is sort of
I mean, not for everybody,
right.
but I think the expectation that you need to, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other divisions, like academic
No,
affairs
I think
side
you're
that,
completely onto something.
but also the extreme side of they really do think they know it all. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've dealt with those people of like, I know Facebook. What are you
Yeah,
doing? Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, you could get a little two sides of that.
So is it really sort of relationship building? Does
It's
it just come
so much relationships. When you meet for coffee or
mm,
whatever you're gonna do, don't even talk about social or marketing.
just get
Like,
to know
get
the
to know,
person?
yeah, like, have
Mm,
you seen Wicked? Oh
mhm.
my, okay, you didn't see Wicked. What else? Fine. We can't be friends.
uh, uh,
Yeah, figure
I
out
how they
yeah,
like to work, how they like to be communicated to, or
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
I love that. So Josie, I get asked a lot, right? I get asked, how do we reach our students? This seems to be like the big question mark. And I often say social is not always the answer. So,
Mm,
what are, do you have secrets or some recommendations of communicators that are trying to reach students, like how they
yeah.
reach students?
I think there is a lot to be gained by knowing a little bit more about student development. And this is like the nerdy side of knowing developmentally where our students are going through physically, sociologically, emotionally. Again, this is where student affairs, having sometimes advanced degrees, like Like that's our coursework, is literally getting in the brains of the human development in order to help them be successful. Because you're right, it's not just about social. We want students to be successful. We want them to learn and transform and hopefully graduate and then give back to our institutions.
Right. But also, like, we want them to know the resources that are available to them. We
Yes.
want
And
them to
so
know the events are happening. Yeah.
that is why being able to communicate, I call it digital engagement, because we are trying to engage with another human being
Right.
who is going through real highs and lows. And again, and I can share a few resources with you afterwards to get to know maybe some really basic like student development theory, where you would understand, not all of a sudden you're going to like build a campaign around Tinto's theory of whatever, but you could.
Yeah.
But when we talk about
different
like
language,
mental health, and some of those key elements that we know are topics that we need to build resources around, there's actually years and years of research behind it, and student affairs could be an advocate. Like we talk that language all the time, just like you talk, like data and I don't know,
like, what are you talking
KPIs or no, you talk about a lot.
Yeah,
All the things.
I get you, but I love what you're saying, because I'm in that space too, where there's not a channel or a tactic or a specific thing that's going to be foolproof in reaching students. So here's what I'm hearing from you is that you have to know where the student culture is at. You have to know where their like current frame of mind or their current emotional state is, to understand like what type of messaging is going to reach them. Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
And I think the powerhouse combined of someone like you, who is what's happening on the internet, the DMs and the comments and the back channels that you can't even like tell except the president. And then student affairs can have both some large sets of data and in-person knowledge that together you could build a stronger knowledge of campus culture in order to better connect and communicate. The second piece I would say is, because student affairs has so much access to students, we already kind of have a lot of things built in place in order to get feedback from students. So I think it's so important to ask students, and it's gonna be raw, and you're not gonna like it. And I've lost track the number of times people like disagree with my data. I'm like, that's nice, but this is what we're being told is happening. And then again, you get to add on analytics and metrics to that to match it up for like which digital helps. Spaces. And then the last piece is, because there's so much access to students, your student affairs colleagues could help you feature more students, and not just your like student influencers and not just student leaders, but they have access to
like not the obvious students,
a rich diversity, and even early access of like someone that an orientation leader got to know at new student programs like right away, and how that could be an amazing. So think of them also as your like secret shoppers for stories that could just like feed you.
I wholehearted it, like they're a focus group. You have like instant access to your primary focus group. I tell this to people all the time. They ask me things about the students or what the students are thinking or wanting, and I always my first thing is, or comment is always, have you asked them?
Yeah, go ask.
And I'm telling you, 100% of the time they say no. And I think that they should be the first group that you ask, right? And student affairs has that access. But I wholeheartedly believe that if the messaging or if the content is of value to them and get their attention, it doesn't matter where you're putting it. I feel like they're going to find it. But I just think a lot of times people say, oh, they're not opening my email. And I mean, half the time it's like, well, would
What was
you?
your email?
Yeah, like would you? But
Oh,
it's like, would you
I
open your
know.
email? I mean, if it's of value, like if the email says, "Oh, we're adding a week on to spring break," trust me, they will have read that
There's gonna
email.
be
Yeah,
high
yeah, exactly.
click-throughs.
So it's like, are you giving them what
I
they're
know.
they value, or what they want, what they need, or what they want,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of time it's the messaging or the content, and if you work with those who are working with the students and really learn the culture, I think that will help check, sort of like, up your value of content, right? And make
Yeah.
it more.
And save you time
Yeah,
too. That email that you spent whatever on that was way too long and not clear could have been XYZ and,
right,
you know.
right, yeah, could have been,
Could
could have been a could have been a message. It didn't
have
have to be a
been.
meeting, right? It didn't have to be any. Could have.
That's another podcast
Exactly. Oh
episode.
my gosh. So if you were to give us some, like, bullet points, say there's, a person in Central comes that says, "Okay, Josie, I know that there's value there. I want to really sort of build a bridge, with
Mhm.
those in student affairs." And I know we said, like, go out for coffee, like, talk, go to a happy hour. What are some further, like, steps can we take to say, I'm available, or this is what I wanted, I want us to be working together more?
I would first figure out the wild west of sometimes what the student affairs structure is.
Mm.
There's lots of spider webs, and so your institution may or may not have a director of marketing and comms that probably reports to like the VP. Many times, though, it's very decentralized. So there are people, Residence Life, a lot of times will have someone that is in charge of marketing, comms, social, web that may or may not be full time. But you may also have a coordinator in campus rec that's doing all social just for the rec center. So it could get frustrating because you're like, this spider web never ends.
That's
What?
a great
Um,
point.
it's
Yeah.
it can be, and honestly, and I joke, when I first started, I was like the super fan of social. I was telling everyone everywhere, get on all the things. And so blame Josie for student affairs, okay? Because there's all these accounts, and so all these people run them. So what I would not do is all of a sudden come in and say, I'm going to do an audit of student affairs social. Like, that is a little aggressive, right? That's why you hire someone like me to do that. What
I
I would
I mean, to
say,
be honest, no one likes the word
no,
audit.
no, I know
Yeah.
we need to come up with a new one,
No one
even for
wants to
my
say,
own good.
I'm auditing your,
I would
anything.
recommend, just like we want to be social on social, first be social with those that do social.
Or find the right people.
Have a
Yeah. Yeah.
right,
I
find the
like
right
it.
people, just meet each other and make it simple. Don't all of a sudden feel like, okay, we're making a committee on committees on anyone that
Oh, no
sends an
more,
email.
no more committees,
You
please.
have an amazing, I think it's a Slack or a Discord channel for everyone at MIT.
Oh, we
Like,
do. We're
that
on
could be
Slack.
a,
Yeah.
maybe you can drop that resource in, how you've built that out. Like, it could be organic, just something in there that
Mm.
and community based, right? It's not like all of a sudden, okay, everyone, new policy, drop it down. Like, you got to follow this within 2 weeks. There has to be a balance, because if you do have some maybe relational work to build back up to, in
Mhm.
addition to probably some strategy and brand improvements that need to happen, just keep in mind we need to, it's like a zipper. You need to blend them both.
I love that analogy.
We,
Yeah.
in order to like have this warm and fuzzy coat to
Yeah.
protect us from the X's and the, the, I don't know, the next
All
thing
the
that's coming
crises.
at
Yeah.
us.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like, we can hold a little closer together, knowing we have to hold both. Like, this work is hard. And as humans, we're trying to work together in the mess of
Yeah.
it. And many times, someone like you, Jenny, in Central Comms could be, what is the zipper piece? You're kind of
the pull. I don't know. I don't know
what. Yeah,
you're the connector. I do call myself a connector. You know,
yes, you're the connector.
Yeah, I do connect people
to bring it together, and to that can also take a lot of energy. I understand, and a lot of campuses have moved away from being the brand police because it became a full-time job.
Right. Yeah.
But so what if instead there could be some harmony of being a connector, a community builder, along with raising the quality across campus at the same time.
And amplifying everyone's voices. No, I like it. So I'm hearing you say, like, find the right people, start small, right? Because and start with you. So, Josie, but the last question I ask everyone on this podcast, since it's Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager, is, what is your confession?
Okay. Well, because you're asking it, you and I have had real conversations over the years.
Real, yeah.
Real, like not to be recorded. No, I'm just kidding. But they weren't, I don't think. I can be really hard on myself. And I've faced and had to overcome inner battles that I found, when I'm the one putting out content and putting literally myself out there. Like, you go to my website, it's my face. I'm like, I should probably update that. I have a different haircut now. And I'm older. But I was having a hard time faking it till you make it, right? Like, just showing up on social and posting. And because I really value being authentic and transparent. So the very first member of my team that I hired, I paid my monies to out of my pocket, because that's what you have to do when you have a business, was someone to help me with marketing and social to be consistent. I had to have someone help me get out of my own way and out of my head. And so I know that's a weird confession, but the more I do this work at all levels, because I work with presidents down to, like first year students, is we have so many stories up in our heads, and what you see on social is one side of it. And for some, they're able to just tell stories, and sometimes for me to post something can take a lot of energy out of me, because I'm just like, I think I'm a little bit of an empath. But I think
I feel you. Yeah.
I think that is a good thing.
Yeah.
So what I've learned, what they say when you get your doctorate, it's your dissertation is really me search. Like, you're searching something about you. And so my philosophy, both in building community and making sure people feel seen and safe, that I am trying to help leaders, campuses, and even students to get out of their own way, to tell the story that, not to say you need to share everything about everything, but especially if you're holding yourself back because of the chatter or the fears or the insecurities, because that's what I'm working on every day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
we all
that's
are.
my confession.
Oh, Josie, I thank you for sharing. And honestly, those are things we all face, and learning how to delegate is like a huge step in leadership too. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that with us. And thank you for taking the time to be here. So
my pleasure,
yeah, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I'm so glad that you have this podcast and this book, and just like, I want the whole world to know Jenny.
Well, thank you for being such a big part of all of it. You've always been encouraging to me, so I will always cherish that. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Mallory Wilsey, and so many others of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.